Let's take a look at some charts on Cardano from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So Cardano is a proof of stake coin that has recently transitioned to proof of stake. It is also in the process of transitioning into complete decentralization, which is kind of silly because you're either decentralized or you're not. It's binary, right? So they're on their way. Whatever, good for them. I was pleasantly surprised by many of these metrics that I'm seeing for ADA. A lot of it probably has to do with ADA moving into the 4th slot on total market cap, which is a bit dubious and largely related to the number of coins in circulation. So there's lots of silliness, and obviously Charles Hoskinson is an interesting character, and I'll try to leave my own personal biases about him out of this video and article. But just looking at other proof of stake coin comparisons, I left ETH off of this list because it isn't proof of stake completely yet. It's hybrid, somewhere in the middle. So Schrodinger's proof of stake. So market cap, daily transaction volume, daily fees, that's all insanely high compared to everything else in the proof of stake realm. One could argue that we've not seen a successful proof of stake coin yet. That would be an argument I'd like to make. I'd like to set forth. Most of these other coins haven't done too much, arguably, relative to their peers in the giant cryptocurrency ecosystem. We can say they've all done things individually. We can say Tron has Tether, but none of them have really done amazingly well relative to other coins. Older coins, proof of stake coins, if you want to make this a proof of stake, proof of work argument, I think that's a valid one. So ADA is trying to change that landscape a bit. Transactions per day, ADA is at the bottom, daily active addresses, it's near the middle, GitHub commits, it's at the top. So it's a bit absurd to compare these all together, but it's my article and that's what I did. So there's your rationale for that. If we look at the total value being staked, the notional value, here's ETH here. ADA is actually the highest. It's hard to tell because the bubbles are all messed up on this this chart, but ADA is number 1, DOT's number 2, Algo, ETH, Atom, SNX, Tezos, Dash, AVAX, those are all near the top as well. And ADA's got 18.5 billion notional. It's got 71% of the network being staked. So I say the same thing I say for ETH or Tezos. If most of your network is being staked, to me that says there isn't much else to do with the network, which is fine. BTC is narrative is store of value, so you're not going to do anything with it. But if you look at ETH, a majority of ETH isn't being staked, it's being used in some way to do something. If we look at that decentralization transition, it's gone for Cardano, it's gone from being fully centralized with all the nodes being produced, all the blocks being produced by nodes of IOHK, and that's being transitioned slowly over time to the pools and the proof of stake nodes being responsible for the network. So until we're here, we're not decentralized, in my opinion. Looking at GitHub commits, they have a lot of Git repos in their GitHub. They have a lot of commits in their GitHub. They have tons of development relative to other coins. We can say that's a strength for Cardano versus some of these other coins. Sure. I'm just looking at commits. I'm not a developer. And at the end of the day, all I want to see is something rather than nothing. It's a bit binary. So there's definitely tons of active development on Cardano. Taking a look at some of the on-chain stats, transaction count in the red, transaction sizes in the green. Transaction counts have hit an all-time high. Most of these on-chain stats have hit an all-time high, the ones that matter anyway. So transactions way up relative to where they've been for Cardano. But as I mentioned at the beginning, relative to other coins, transactions aren't extremely high. If we look at fees are also rising with block size which looks like it's significant in bytes, again, compared to everything else. Block size wise, on-chain wise, not a ton of total block size being moved around per block. But when you compare this to where ADA was over the past few years, it was, it dipped below 500 bytes per block, which to me is, empty, right? If we look at BTC blocks, it's 1.2 megabytes on average. If you look at ETH, those blocks are cram-packed full. So this is all bullish for Cardano, but relative to other stuff, other chains, it's tough to say it's more bullish than other chains. It's just a new chapter for Cardano. So when fees rise like this, I always say for anything that it's pointing to scalability issues, you don't want to see runaway fees as the chain finally gets popular and people are using it. That prices microtransactions out of the equation. Just look what happened with ETH right now. It's just the fees are insane. NVT, inverse metric of economic utility, and active addresses. Active addresses at an all-time high. Got to be bullish on that. NVT dipped extremely low, and this was during the proof of stake transition. So as a ton of on-chain activity was occurring, moving into pools and whatnot, NVT dipped down, so that you'd expect to see that. Now it's sort of normalized and is still decreasing, so this says that on-chain activity is still rather significant despite the increase in market cap, so this is a bullish outlook for sure. And Google Trends, probably the most surprising thing that I saw when looking at all these Cardano charts, is an all-time high, even more so than 2017. So tons and tons and tons of interest for Cardano across the board, and that all makes sense. It all lines up. You'd expect to see a chart that looks like this on any USD pair where transactions are at an all-time high, active addresses are at an all-time high, Google Trends are at an all-time high, NVT arguably near all-time lows. Looking at technicals with the 50, the 200, yearly pivots, VPVR, volume, and RSI. So we've been bullish on the 5200 since mid-2020. We've tapped it a few times. Now we're over 2x the 200-day moving average, so we're getting a bit hot. Certainly, we're above the R5 yearly pivot already for Cardano. So this had a little cup and handle consolidation and then a reconsolidation and just been slingshotting ever since. Cardano's done extremely well since the proof of stake transition, which isn't really a surprise. VPVR support is basically 13 cents and lower, not much support on the way down over the past few months based on volume. There just isn't a lot of activity in this area. So any of these yearly pivots will act as support, the 50 and 200 will act as support. Really 26 cents, if things get crazy, is where I'd look to for decent support based on yearly pivots and the 200-day moving average. Curiously enough, there's no bearish divergence on this high from this high. RSI probably close to an all-time high on the daily there. So the next move up, if there is a next move up, we'll probably see a bearish divergence, which just says there's waning bullish momentum. If we look at the cloud, we had a bullish Kumo breakout near the end of last year, touched the Kijun a couple times over the past few months, but all in all, everything's just bullish. The expectations are bullish. It's what you'd expect to see. Daily Kijun support at 60 cents. So that's where most of my bids would be if I was trading this. And then lastly, ADA BTC, also just exploding. You had a breakout of the yearly pivot, the daily cloud, and the 200-day moving average all about the same time earlier this year. And that essentially was a 2x plus to around 2100 sats from 900, from 800, whatever that is, 850. So again, not a lot of VPVR support on the way down. Really no supports of any kind based on anything until 1200, 1350 sats. You're looking at the daily Kijun, the yearly pivot, and basically these local highs as supports on the way down. So I think this is going to need to cool off a little bit. It's definitely just slingshot screaming right now. If this does make a higher high, it will probably be a bearish divergence based on where the RSI sits on the previous high. But my guess is this is just going to be massively range bound in the near term. So overall, it's hard not to be bullish on Cardano based on the on-chain stats, based on Google Trends, based on trend metrics. It's outperforming BTC since the beginning of the year. I don't know how long that's going to last. I expect this just to range. But this is definitely a bullish quarter for Cardano thus far.